It is Monday, it's the 9th of June. I'm Moon Kwon-young. This is ARIRANG News live from Seoul. Our top stories today. Cabinet shakeup imminent. President Park Geun-hye may nominate a new prime minister as early as this Monday, signaling the start of a cabinet-wide reshuffle. At least a dozen North Koreans who claim to have escaped the North are arrested in Thailand. And Korean golfer Park Geun-hye wins her first LPGA Tour title this year and her first in nearly a year. We'll have those stories and more, but first we begin at the nation's top office. Now, with last week's local elections done and ousted, President Park Geun-hye is expected to push ahead with her much-anticipated reshuffle of the cabinet and her presidential office aides. And a new prime minister nominee could be named as early as today. Our Kim Min-ji has our top story.
President Park Geun-hye will likely announce her pick to fill the vacant prime minister's seat as early as this Monday. With the local elections out of the way, the president is expected to speed up the cabinet reshuffle in response to public criticism of the government's lax handling of April's ferry disaster. Sources say President Park has been searching for a candidate with an innovative mind and ethical integrity. This comes after our previous Prime Minister nominee An Dae-hee withdrew last month amid criticism over the amount of money he earned in the private sector after retiring as a Supreme Court justice.
국가 개혁의 적임자로 국민들께서 요구하고 있는 분을 찾고 있습니다.
The president has been mulling over potential candidates as she seeks to press ahead with her reform agenda. Among the candidates under consideration are Kim Young-nan, former head of the Anti-Corruption and Civil Rights Commission, as well as Cho Moo-jae, a former Supreme Court justice. With the ruling Saenuri Party failing to grab winning tickets from the Chungcheong-do provinces at the local elections, candidates from these provinces are also being considered, including Shim Dae-pyang, the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Local Autonomy Development. A reshuffle is also imminent at the presidential office. President Park on Sunday tapped Yoon Joo-hyun as the new senior presidential press secretary after a close aide stepped down from the post as he's reportedly considering running in a by-election next month. Yoon, the head of YTN Plus, a digital contents provider, was noted by the presidential office for his balanced way of thinking and sharp analytical skills as a journalist.
Yoon was appointed as he's the right person to explain government reform policies to the public and receive their understanding and cooperation.
A review process is also underway for other presidential aides to be replaced. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
And as the country slowly recovers from the recent Seoul ferry disaster, and now with the local elections over, the government says it's putting all its focus on spurring the economic recovery. ARIRANG News Yoo-rian has more.
이번이 마지막이라는 생각으로 어렵게 살려낸 경제 회복의 불씨를 더욱 크게 살리고 우리 경제의 재도약을 이끌어서 대한민국의 희망을 만들어 갈 것입니다.
President Park Geun-hye has put economic revitalization at the top of her agenda, and she's vowing to pour all efforts into carrying out her 3-year economic innovation plan announced back in February. The first part of the 3-part plan is public sector reform, which has been under the spotlight since April's Seoul ferry disaster. A major step in the public sector reform is cutting debt levels at public organizations by tightening lax management. With the reforms in place, the debt-to-equity ratio was dropped to below 190% by 2017 from the current 220%. But since the government came under fire for mishandling the ferry disaster, the focus has shifted to rooting out corruption and cracking down on cronyism, or so-called parachute appointments. Minimizing government regulations is another major goal laid out by President Park. She had wanted to get rid of 1/5 of all government regulations by the end of her term in 2018. But some pundits say this goal will be hard to meet, given that the ferry disaster was blamed partly on a lack of safety-related regulations. Senior government officials say, however, that they will continue to take out unnecessary regulations. Finally, President Park has vowed to create an innovative economy. Helped by the government's drive to promote startups, the number of newly established businesses in the first quarter this year exceeded 20,000 for the first time in 14 years. The government is also looking to provide assistance to businesses in every stage of growth. Yurian, ARIRANG News.
Well, the dust from last week's local elections has settled, but there's no time to rest for the nation's ruling Saenuri Party. Over the coming weeks, they will select a new party leader and prepare for by-elections in July. With the local elections ending in a virtual draw, next month's elections have taken on greater significance. Our correspondent Ji Myung-kil tells us more.
With the campaigning over and the races decided, the ruling Saenuri Party now faces a slew of challenges ahead. The ruling party plans to establish a new committee to reform the government's overall management system in the wake of April's ferry disaster.
We expect a new prime minister and new cabinet members. To coincide with President Park Geun-hye's upcoming reshuffle, our party is considering plans to restructure itself.
The Saenuri Party will also hold a party convention on July 14th to nominate a new leader. Saenuri Party heavyweights Kim Moo-sung and Seo Chung-won have announced their intentions to run, and both have pledged to give the party new life through reforms. The new party leader's first task will likely be rallying the troops ahead of July 30th by-elections. They are considered important as the number of National Assembly seats up for grabs could be as high as 18. 10 former lawmakers gave up their assembly badges to run in local elections, while 2 lawmakers lost seats for violating election laws. Another 8 more seats could be available as lawmakers are awaiting rulings on other charges. Political analysts say the outcome of the by-elections could serve as another barometer of public sentiment on the heels of the local elections. The ruling party currently holds 149 seats in parliament and needs just 1 more seat to resume its majority status at the 300-member National Assembly. Ji Myung-kil, ARIRANG News.
Well, President Park Geun-hye will embark on another overseas trip, this one a 6-day trip to Central Asia next week. The presidential office of Cheongwon says from June 16th, President Park will make a state visit to Uzbekistan to discuss the two sides' ongoing natural gas development and thermoelectric plant construction projects. Now, from the 18th, President Park will make a state visit to Kazakhstan to discuss bilateral projects involving coal-fired thermal plants and petrochemical complexes. Visiting Turkmenistan for the first time as Korea's president, Park will seek ways for the governments on both sides to expand support for Korean businesses in that region. The presidential office adds the 3 countries are considered key partners in line with President Park Geun-hye's Eurasia initiative of linking energy and logistics infrastructure across the continent. Meanwhile, it's been nearly 2 months since the tragic solar accident capsized and then sank off Korea's southwestern coast, taking more than 300 people with it. Now, round-the-clock search operations, which have encountered a number of setbacks in recent weeks, continue. With more favorable conditions in the area since Sunday, 2 more bodies have been recovered. Our Kwon So-ah with the latest.
The number of missing is shrinking, and the number of confirmed dead is rising. With waters around Jindo Island in the southwest of the country at their calmest on Sunday, rescue divers recovered a male body at around 11:30 p.m. from the 4th floor of the sunken vessel. The government's disaster response headquarters is conducting DNA tests and fingerprint analysis to identify the body. A female victim was retrieved on the 3rd floor cafeteria of the ship Sunday morning. She was identified as the Tanwon High School teacher who had stayed on the ship and saved 19 students. The government's disaster response headquarters has decided on a 3-step plan for recovery operations moving forward. Up until the 20th, divers will continue to search the cabins. After that date, remotely operated vehicles and sound navigation and ranging methods will be used for harder-to-reach locations. Additional equipment designed to ensure that bodies aren't carried out of the ship by currents is also expected to be installed. Meanwhile, the trial for the 15 crew members of the Sewol-ho ferry who were indicted last month for abandoning the passengers on board will begin on Tuesday in Gwangju District Court. 4 of them, including Captain Lee Jun-seok, are charged with homicide by willful negligence. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Moon Gon-young live from Seoul.
Mobile shopping market for the dual use of the Korean name East Sea and Japanese name Sea of Japan in school textbooks in the state of Virginia. Well, here comes a not-so-welcome news for female workers here in Korea. The income gap between male and female workers in Korea is the widest in the developed world. This is according to a new report by Korea's National Assembly Research Service. Now, OECD statistics on full-time employee wages in 2010 shows a gender income gap of 39% in Korea. Japan, number 2 on the list, was way below at 29%. Hungary had the smallest income gap at less than 4%. The report advises the government to take legislative action to narrow the income gap by offering more support to women who want to return to their careers after starting a family. Meanwhile, foreign investors are snapping up more and more stocks on the Korean bourse, but they are flocking to one conglomerate in particular, Samsung Group. And all pointers suggest that this trend will continue for the foreseeable future. Our Song Ji-sun tells us why.
Samsung Group is attracting foreign investors to the Korean bourse. Over the past 20 trading days, when Korean retail investors were sidelined, foreigners remained net buyers, pushing the benchmark Kospi index up by nearly 3%. Data released by the Korea Exchange on Monday shows a quarter of all shares bought by foreigners over the past month were those of Samsung Group companies. Foreigners now own more than 35% of all listed shares on the main bourse. Corporate analysts attribute the spiking Samsung share price to the group's improving profitability and the need for the children of Samsung Group patriarch Lee Geun-hye to continue speeding up the succession process. Analysts say the rise in Samsung shares accounted for a third of the 3% gain in the Korean market's capitalization in the past month. Samsung Electronics has been the main target of recent purchases by foreigners, who now control more than half of the company. The tech firm now accounts for 18% of the main bourse's total market cap. Foreigners kept buying Samsung shares since Samsung chairman Lee Geun-hye was hospitalized in May following a heart attack, on hopes the group's ongoing reorganization and transfer of the company's control to Lee's 3 children could yield capital gains. In a move widely seen speeding up the succession, Samsung SDS and Samsung Everland recently announced plans for initial public offerings by next March. After their IPOs, Samsung Group affiliates could account for over 30% of the market capitalization of all listed companies. Experts say the bullish foreign buy will continue in the near future, given their preferences to invest in safer companies like Samsung, coupled with expectations Samsung will benefit from the U.S. economic recovery. Song Ji-sun, ARIRANG News.
Now, at least a dozen North Korean escapees have been arrested in Thailand. This is according to Japanese media reports that say 13 North Koreans who are thought to have been smuggled into Thailand were caught in the northern Chiang Rai region. Reports say that the group, which includes 2 children, likely crossed into Thailand after passing through China and Laos with hopes of defecting. Thai media also reported that the would-be defectors are from the northeastern part of North Korea and traveled by boat from southern China before being caught in Thailand. Pakistan's busiest airport was the scene of a deadly battle between security forces and armed militants on Sunday. At least 20 people have been confirmed killed, and there are reports that gunfire has resumed at that airport. Our Shin Se-min reports on the initial assault that began late Sunday evening, local time.
A 5-hour assault on Pakistan's busiest airport has finally come to an end. At least 20 people were killed and more than a dozen others injured, many of them airport security personnel after armed militants disguised as police carried out an assault on a terminal at Jinnah International Airport in Karachi on Sunday evening. The death toll includes at least 10 militants. A spokesman for Pakistan's Civil Aviation Authority says thousands of people, including airline staff, passengers, and members of the airport security force were present at the airport when the terrorist attack began. Police and army officials also say at least one aircraft was destroyed in a gunfight that involved machine guns and a rocket launcher. There were also reports of at least 2 blasts at the airport. The terminal where the assault was carried out is not normally used for commercial flights, but instead of cargo and special VIP operations. No one has claimed responsibility for the attack yet, although it comes as peace talks with the Taliban and other militants have stumbled in the recent days. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Now, on a very different note, Korean golfer Park Geun-hye has gotten herself back on the winning track by finishing first in the Manulife Financial LPGA Classic in Canada. It ends a 20-event tour winless streak that dates back more than 11 months and comes just 1 week after Park's 59-week run at #1 in the world was snapped. Park finished the tournament at 23 under, beating Christy Kerr of the United States by 3 strokes. Now, in the final round, Park shot a 10 under 61 with 10 birdies. And now on to some exciting news that many of you might have been waiting about. Korean singer Psy has released the music video for his new single, Hangover. The 5-minute video, filmed here in Korea, comically puts the spotlight on this country's unique drinking culture and features American rapper Snoop Dogg. Now, in that video, both entertainers are shown taking drinks to cure their hangovers, eating kimbap, which is a roll, kind of a rice roll here in Korea, at a convenience store, and attending singing rooms. Now, the song is now available to purchase on iTunes. Psy shot to global fame with his 2012 song Gangnam Style, which holds the title as the most watched video ever on YouTube. Now, the FIFA World Cup in Brazil kicks off in just a few days' time, and Koreans, of course, are well known around the world for feverish support of their team. Although everything is ready for people to enjoy the games, festivities are likely to be toned down this year in the wake of the recent ferry disaster. Our Polly explains.
Here in the capital, Seoul, many sports retailers are unusually quiet despite the World Cup being just around the corner. Large advertisement banners and over-the-top promotional events have been absent from storefronts. It's part of a conscious choice by many football fans and businesses to tone down celebrations as the country continues to deal with the shock and grief from April's Sewol ferry sinking.
The atmosphere was really great during the World Cup 4 years ago. But even with a few days left with the World Cup, there's no atmosphere of excitement. Many people don't feel like it's the World Cup.
Official corporate sponsors of the upcoming World Cup are also adjusting their marketing campaigns in Korea to reflect public sentiment. For example, many are using televised ads with gentler music and subdued visuals.
Given the recent national sentiment, we're proceeding with a calmer tone. Our TV advertisements are colorful and have a lively atmosphere. However, we're moving forward with a message that has a softer mood.
Major department store chains are also taking a different approach, with World Cup-themed fashion shows and cartoon exhibitions featuring famous South American artists.
As you know, there are many people who are suffering from the Sewol disaster. Through this exhibition, we want to give people a chance to heal and support each other.
The opening match for the World Cup will kick off on June 12, while Korea will face off against Russia in their first match on June 17. But unlike in past years, the official supporters group, the Red Devils, won't be launching large-scale rallies through the streets of Seoul. Nonetheless, millions of fans at home and abroad will be cheering on the Korean men's national team, albeit with a heavy heart. Paul Yi, ARIRANG News.
And speaking of the 2014 FIFA World Cup in Brazil, it is literally just days away, so there is understandably a lot of attention on the Latin American country these days. Our Im Yoon-hee joins us in the studio to tell us where the focus is in the arts and culture scene. So let's bring her in. Good afternoon to you, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon.
So you tell me that here in Korea we're privileged to be hosting some pieces of art by Brazil's most famous cartoonist.
Right, so we saw a little bit in the package right before. So one of Brazil's most famous cartoonists, Mauricio de Souza, he's most well known for his comics series called Monica's Gang, but he also has some very fun renditions of some of Korea's famous football heroes, both past and present. And so with that said, let's take a closer look at these cartoons along with some of his other works that he's known for. Kim Nam-il, Lee Young-pyo, and Kim Shin-wook. These are just a few of the names of World Cup players, and they've been transformed into cartoons, thanks to the crafty work of Mauricio de Souza. From reporter to cartoonist, Souza is now beloved by Brazil's children. But this artist goes beyond the pages of a comic book to recreate some of art's most well-known paintings, transforming them into pop art.
I chose well-known masterpieces, then altered them to make them show the friendly nature of children.
The seesaw is something most children grew up with on the playground. And it's now the center of Kim Young-bum's new exhibition. Based upon the relationship between life and death, these works show Kim's fascination with wood. Now, art is a labor as illustrated by this artist through his pieces, but it's also a chance to show the emotions of nostalgia, repressed under the bounds of an irreversible past.
Now, the second artist, he has some very, very interesting work. Some a little bit frightening, I must admit. Where does he get his inspiration?
Right, so I was looking at some of his earlier works, not at this particular exhibition, but an earlier one, and he really seems to take inspiration from nature, from trees, like you saw a seesaw that incorporated the whole tree into the seesaw. But I must say, a lot of his works incorporates nature in a very impractical way that really makes you think twice.
Right, but seesaw, like you said, it has many links to children. When I see a seesaw, I would automatically think of children playing on it and stuff, and you find it in schoolyards.
Right, it's a very nostalgic, memory trip down memory lane with the seesaw, and so he actually said that he wanted to incorporate this nostalgia and this idea of going to the past and reliving these fond memories. But at the same time, he said you do have to realize that the past is something that you cannot change, and so regardless of which, he said that the past is the past, but you can still move on to the future. And so his work does feature some very interesting links between life and death.
Right. I mean, there definitely what left a big impression on me is the one with the animal skull and the one what looked like tree branches for antlers.
Right.
A little. Still, like I said, a little bit frightening for me, but yeah.
A little bit of a different approach, right? So he does take this, and he actually said with this piece, along with the tree, there's a legend that he likes to think about, and this legend says that, as trees, the branches, they get higher, they get closer to the sky, they get, more beautiful with time, but with each growth, with each inch up, it gets closer to death, and the same thing with these antlers. But at the same time, these things are part of the circle of life, and so like with the antlers, they'll fall off, but it'll become something for the next round, the next cycle of life, in the forest, in the nature. And so a very unique relationship.
Yeah, very unique, very interesting, and very different approach on things, definitely. And of course, Brazil will be the focus of many, many people's attention for the next week or so. So we will definitely be looking into his works as well. All right, Yoon-hee, thank you so much for that.
My pleasure.
Good afternoon. The heat has returned after a cool holiday weekend, and today's daytime highs are expected to rise across the nation compared to yesterday. We can expect a cloudy day here in the capital and thunderstorm this afternoon over in the Gangwon-do and Chungcheon-namdo provinces. Now, the rainy conditions will continue throughout the week and spread nationwide on Wednesday and focuses onto the east coastal region on Thursday and Friday. Now, going over to our temperature readings, Seoul will top out at 28 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will peak up to 28 and 23 degrees. Now, moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops out at 24, Dokdo at 20, while Mankungang tops out at 18. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Kwon-young.
Thanks, Michelle, for that. And that's just about all from me at this hour. I'm Moon Kwon-young. Check back with us at 4 p.m. Korea time for Business Today.